Welcome to this new edition of the Plate Sessions, a podcast where we talk about content, content marketing, content editing. And this time we have a US-based citizen with us in the Netherlands. So it's Larry. Maybe can you introduce yourself, Larry?
Yeah, my name's Larry. I'm new to the Netherlands. I'm actually a U.S. citizen, but living here in Utrecht and just moved here. Part of the reason I came here is that the business culture in the Netherlands and in Europe is kind of need a break from America.
Okay.
And I've been doing content stuff of different kinds for a long time. I started in book publishing way back in the late 80s, early 90s, got into web stuff from there and kind of the original .com boom and lots of stuff since.
Yeah.
All the usual variety of things that a content person of my tenure has done, like a lot of web marketing, SEO, content build. This is when I want to sound like an old person, I go, back in my day, you had to build your own CMS. Yeah. So I built a couple of CMSs back in the late 90s. Nice. And it didn't build. I worked with teams of developers. And then kind of over that time span, have shifted my identity from a publisher to a UX practitioner, and more of a generic HCD, a human-centered design practitioner now is kind of how I think about myself. Focused on content.
Yeah, and content architecture?
Yeah, I call myself a content architect.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's sort of like kind of a combination of content strategy, information architecture, and content modeling is what I would put in those things. And again, back to that human-centered design focus, always focused on a user journey. Okay. You know, that like, where you at? How can I help you? What's the content you need at this point in time? There you go. Yeah, that's sort of how I view my content work now.
Nice. Yeah. Content modeling is one of the topics for today. But first, you are a host of a podcast as well. You did over 100 podcasts.
I just dropped episode 148 last night.
Nice.
So I've done a couple.
Yeah, and in your podcast, you're talking with other content editors, people within the content.
It's management. Anybody. It's weird. Like, you know it when you see it. Like, I don't do a lot of content marketing anymore because a lot of content marketing is, like content marketing content for like SEO purposes. Yeah. It's not, I'm not that interested in, I've done a lot of editorial planning and things like that. I'm more interested in like the design of content experiences and the varying like sort of crafts in which it's practiced. Like, there's basically like strategists, designers, engineers, operations people. So if you're doing content stuff with any one of those intents, and then the practices around that, like everything from, I just had Paula Land on. She does probably the best, if not only book on content audits and inventories. And like practices like that, like how do you do a good content audit? How do you design good content? How do you run a good content design team? My podcast, it's all about the practice.
Yeah, okay. And if you look back at all the 145 episodes, can you elaborate a bit on the biggest lessons you've learned or what you have seen from?
That's easy. It's like every episode comes back to like, we talk about technology, we talk about techniques and practices, but it's people. It's all about people. And it's true that most of practice is about aligning stakeholders around a strategic vision, about motivating authors to do, to work in maybe environments that challenge them a little bit, getting designers to balance user needs and business goals. It's like, it's all getting people to do stuff. We would all like to do what we'd like to do, but we're all kind of accommodating one another. It's like the way all these practices have evolved to be more collaborative. Yeah. I think that's sort of like, and collaboration is about getting along with people. So the truism that has emerged in like almost every episode is that content strategists are really more like therapists, that we're working with people, helping them work out their stuff. In our case, we're helping them work out their content stuff. Okay. So, yeah.
So it is about the people and about the process, maybe?
Yeah, and there's sort of this, everybody talks about people, process, technology. Okay, yeah. And that's sort of the right order. to me. That like
people,
the
process,
people
technology.
focus on the people. I actually have a pie chart I've used in some presentations, but completely made up numbers, but like it's 77% people, 20% procedures, and 8% technology, which I know to a CMS vendor that must just be heresy. But
No.
Yeah.
That's what I see as well, because you can build a great CMS, but if people don't want to work with it, or if people are forced to work with a certain CMS by or a reseller or an agency or maybe an other department within the company, it's clueless, and it's maybe useless to or at least it is hard to get the adoption that you want, and the best. I think maybe the best technology projects are led by people to say, and to have people involved, and then their needs and more the soft skilled stuff instead of just it should be hosted or not hosted or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
No, you 1,000% agree. Although the one thing I would take issue with are soft skills. I don't think of like communication and aligning people and running workshops. I think of those as foundational skills. This is a little soapbox I get up on. It's like, because I think that it's sort of like, hard skills are engineering and product management, and soft skills are kind of, it's like, no, we're as tough and as business oriented and as capable and it's just, and more seriously in the context of this kind of work, it really is people work. And you've got to figure that out, because like we were talking in the car and as we came down here about Dean Barker and Jeff Eaton, and everybody's saying like, people hate their CMS because the authoring experience is so bad. And it's like, well, because you didn't listen to the authors when you chose your CMS.
Yeah.
So again, that gets back to what you were saying. Like, you got to talk to the right people.
Or you should teach them. Sometimes it's just here it is, and here are 3 videos or a demo environment or whatever. Now maybe the CMS is right, but people don't know how to work with it.
No, that's a good point. That I think that there's we all have to. I love that everybody is so passionate and about what they do and how they do it, and want to, like, designers just want to stay focused on the end user. But you got to give a little bit and focus on the business needs. And it's like there's only a few hundred CMSs available. There's not the perfect one yet for you. So we're going to have to teach you some stuff to use this system. That's a perfectly reasonable business prerogative, I think. Yeah.
The reason why I invited you to this podcast was I saw on LinkedIn post 2 weeks ago, so
Something,
on a Sunday night about generative AI and how people nowadays can create a lot of content with AI, but you stated that it was maybe not focused on, or AI should not be focused on creating new content all the time, but improving and reusing content. So that was a nice, let's say, issue or topic that I say, okay, I want to have this guy on the podcast, and then I discovered that you are in Utrecht. So that's even better.
Right. Even better. That's
But can you, because I see a lot of content editors and content marketers to working with AI, creating and generating a lot of content, but not always getting the results that they want because they are creating for the sake of creating, maybe. Can you maybe?
Yeah, well, that's like all anybody thinks about these days is AI, and I think about it like everybody else. And I think in terms of that, like, you're reminding me of some trauma. You just triggered some trauma in me.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. A few months ago, I helped Tracy Plale at a conference called Utterly Content. Convened a panel on AI, and this was just that was March. ChatGPT had been out for a while, but like the real fuss was just really coming to a head then, and which is why we convened this panel kind of last minute to talk about that. But around that same time, and this goes back to the people thing, like, people are going to look at any new technology and go, how can this help me do what I do and do it better and faster? And so my inbox was, and my social media feeds were flooded with content marketers going, this is great. I'm creating 500 pieces of content a day and testing them. And I'm like, whoa, as a content strategist, that just baffles me. Like, who told you that they needed these 5? You're just testing some thing that you have. Like, it just sort of, so there's that part of generative AI. That's the most extreme example that kind of scares me to death is like there will be this endless stream of even more content coming. But and that was sort of the point of that post that we connected over, was that there's huge implications for generative AI across every kind of content. Like I have friends that my last gig was at Expedia, and they're doing a ton of really interesting stuff around generative AI in product and in the communication platform they operate, all kinds of different things. So there's a huge implication of generative AI. But the post I made was about what I call consumptive AI.
Yeah.
You know, that there's maybe the thing I said in that post, like maybe there's more value in creating better content experiences, like for personalization or for recommendation or for like omnichannel experiences of various kinds, that using the power of AI to kind of curate and craft content experiences with what you already have. This kind of gets to like one of the things that drives me nuts about just random content creation is that content, it's like as valuable as the people you hire or the money you have in the bank. You know, the content is a precious asset, and you shouldn't just be like, minting it out in the backyard and just throwing it in the front yard and hoping somebody buys it. You know, that
it's a craft.
It's a craft, and the content should be crafted with purpose and intent and all that. And then once you have it, like once you've treated you and created your content that way, then you can do like that consumptive AI stuff that I talk about. Like, and this has been the thing about that too, is that that's been around forever. You look at like what Jeff Coyle has been doing at Market Muse, or what May Habib is doing at writer.com. These kinds of businesses. And before Writer, May was running a company called Cordoba. And there's other companies in that realm that do like, and they're more like, when you think about AI too, it's like it's not just generative AI, chat GPT stuff. There's all this NLP and knowledge graphs and knowledge representation models of different kinds. So there's a whole world of AI stuff out there. And right now, generative AI and chat GPT is getting all the attention. But my point was that, like, there's other things you can do with AI, and a lot of it will both encourage better content practice and help you, and it might give you more opportunities, more bottom line generating opportunities than just cranking out a bunch of new stuff.
And have the, let's say, reader or the target audience in mind, instead of, because if...
Just a thought.
Just a thought. Because if I will be the, let's say, buyer persona for a certain company, am I happy that there are now all of a sudden 500 extra posts are available on Google or on a certain website? No, I don't care. Yeah. My attention span will be even shorter, maybe, because of all the information that is available, and you will be annoyed. I think
that kind of gets it. Like, I think one of the best services we could offer in an era of information overload as content strategists of any kind or content practitioners of any type, is to help people deal with information overload. The last thing that overwhelmed people need is more content. Yeah. It's like, well, let me just get you the right content, in the context that you're in.
How, for example, can a content editor do that? Because there is a pressure, maybe from within the company, to say we need more results, we need more paid views, we need more, let's say, demos or whatever, and they think the ingredient to get there is more content.
Yep. No, and you can probably demonstrate some benefit of that at some point. My argument would be, and I don't know how to ever run this experiment, but my thought is that you could take the same resources that you're using to just, license chat GPT APIs or whatever you're doing to generate this tons of content. What if you spent as much time on user research to find out, really good customer, genuine customer-centric, human-centered customer journey mapping, figuring out what experiences you need to create to help people along those journeys, figure out the content you need to advance those journeys, focus on that. I guarantee you, I can't, nobody's going to give me the budget to do this, but I guarantee you. But
so more learning about the context of where the content should be placed.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Context. I think, I wish I had a screenshot of this. Back in 1996, I remember drafting, we didn't have blogs then, but it looked like a blog post. But like, I remember drafting this thing about content, context, community, and commerce. that those are going to be the thing. It's like everybody was an internet genius back then. I was like, here's how the future is going to look. It was like, I don't know. But I think there was something to that. The context was an important part of that.
Okay. Yeah.
And so this gets kind of back to the people stuff too. If your context is you're a content marketer who's tasked with improving SEO results for your company, and from prior experience that if you do this little clickbaity thing or this optimize whatever thing post length or whatever it is you're optimizing for, if you can do that and get like 2% more business, you get a pat on the back and a bonus or something. But I'm like, as an executive in that company, what if you took those same resources and applied it to like all the stuff I was just talking about, like more customer-centric, focused approach, and looked at like bigger impacts you could be having? I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit around.
And if you can continue maybe a bit on that, the importance of reusing, recreating, or repurposing content instead of just creating new.
Yep.
I see a lot of content editors struggling with that. Because it's easier to just create a new stuff instead of digging deeper with an existing article and put it in a different context or writing that into a specific.
No, that you're right. That gets right back to the people stuff.
Yeah,
because creators want to create.
But then it's more an issue for the leadership, right?
Yep.
If it's a people problem, then someone in the company should be accountable for that or address that issue.
No, I think you're right. And I think, I don't know, I don't know how the C-suite thinks, like how to get, but I've always been sort of like at the director and SVP level in terms of the influence I've been able to have in organizations. And so at that level, it's more about like, and there's this truism in advance, because what we're talking about here is innovation in content practice.
Yeah.
And innovation only comes from like good ideas turned into inventions that do something different, and then it gets adopted as an innovation. That's how I think about that sort of pathway. And in order for that to happen, you have to show, like, for example, I can think of an example like in the SEO content marketing world. Like if you could show that, like if you have you might have a different reuse strategy than like technical. Like, by the way, we've had really powerful abilities to save and reuse componentized content for decades. The DITA standard in the technical world is well established. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. I think so. You could learn from like. That's an actual W3C standard based, DITA is a flavor of XML that is, but I think you don't have to do it that way. You can do it with whatever headless CMS you have. You can, and this gets into the importance of modeling. Yeah. You can model your content in a way that it's built to be reusable. And so back to like the content marketer who just has this pressure to get results and get stuff out, you can work with them to figure out, okay, here's how you can still be creative about this, but let's be creative about assembling these components that we've already created that we know work, because one of the benefits, I haven't seen it done really well anywhere yet, but one of the potential benefits of this new modular decoupled architectures down at the micro level, at the componentized content level, is the opportunity to measure the effectiveness of content independent of exactly where it shows up. So you can say, hey, we've got these little components here that have shown to work in this kind of situation. Just shift your authoring mindset a little bit to think about how can I put together these things rather than just original creative thoughts out of my own head or my own, chat GPT prompts, which is probably how a lot of it's happening now. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But so do you say that repurposing or reusing content is directly linked to content modeling? So if you have a strong content model, or at least a vision on what you think is content and how you want to, let's say, distribute that content, then it's way easier to reuse and republish it.
Yep. You absolutely have to have that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would argue.
So if someone is listening and want to do reusable content but don't have a content modeling clue or idea, then it's hard to get the results or to see the impact of reusable content.
100%.
Okay.
Yes, exactly right. You need a content modeling practice, and that's going to look different in this decoupled
world.
Because
you and I were talking 2 weeks ago about content modeling, and that we thought that no one in the world now, not that many, not that many people in the world see the value of content modeling. Can you pitch us a little bit on why content modeling is important, especially for content editors that want to have more impact with the same content? If we see it in that.
Yeah, well, just to get to that scenario we were just talking about, you have to have a model. You have to have a place to build your Lego kit, that's one way to think about this. Is like Legos versus a blob of clay that you're forming something out of. Your Legos are reusable, standardized components. They all have some number of dots, and however there's a whole system that makes that work. So in order to build that, though, you have to have a content model. And it used to be that you generally, this is an oversimplification, but for the most part, you would inherit like the modeling framework from whatever CMS you were using. Like and up until like 5 or 10 years ago, that's just, and even today, that's how a huge amount.
So the framework is bigger than the CMS?
Well, the
agnostic?
Well, yeah. So we're getting to the point where you need a CMS agnostic model.
Okay.
Because I would argue that the way to do any content, and I think of CMS as two kinds now, like the big CMS, the content management system, this enterprise level system in which you manage. You might have a couple of CMSs in there, a PIM, a DAM, an ER. You might have links to ERPs and things like that.
Yeah.
That there's that, and then there's the individual CMS, the technical tool that manages these content things that you're working with, and like we were talking about before, like it's all bespoke. Every company's going to do it differently. They're going to have very good reasons for having some kinds of content in one place or another.
Yeah.
And so you just have to. But a good and it doesn't. And the other thing is, I'm talking about like an enterprise-wide content model where you understand what all you have. I think in order to truly address omnichannel strategy, you need that or something like that, some kind of at least federation or some kind of knowledge, understanding of the content you have on top of everything to execute an omnichannel strategy, which is a whole other. But again, none of this is possible without a content model.
Yeah, but this may be the problem. We started with reusable, then we went to content modeling, then we went to omnichannel or headless. So I can imagine for a more traditional company that it is super hard where to start, because if you start with A, then you should check B, C, D, and when it is good enough. And so I see a lot of companies struggling with that. Say, okay, we want to go headless for the sake of headless, but that's not a vision, or that's not, let's say, an path that is going in the right direction for or not a sustainable right direction. So I think that's because it's all linked to each other. This is hard for the actual companies.
Yeah,
for the actual people.
1,000% agree with everything you just said, and I think again, but it's one of the. There's a lot of people stuff, obviously, that's going to have to happen in there. Yeah. But one of the and a big part of content modeling is people stuff too. There's like Jeff Eaton talks about title case content modeling versus lowercase content modeling, and Cleve Gibbon, one of the real pioneers of content modeling, used to talk about the process of modeling versus the product of modeling. And I think about that too. I do some stuff in the semantic world as well, and I think of like a domain model can generate an ontology that describes a domain.
Yeah.
A content model can describe content things that can be described in a schema for a CMS.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. So that's the small c content model, the schema that you end up to organize the stuff that's in a CMS. So again, that's kind of a prerequisite for any of this other stuff like omnichannel or personalization. That's a huge one. Like, I don't know how you could ever do personalization without really well modeled, semantically meaningful content. Like it just, I don't like, do you know anybody who's doing personalization well? I haven't seen.
If I attend some, let's say, expos or some trade shows, and all of the sessions there with personalization are full with people. But the problem is with execution.
Yeah.
So everyone wants personalization, and everybody wants to do something with, let's say, all kinds of more impact ways of content, but it is super hard where to start because it's all linked to a foundational problem and maybe that's content modeling.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we need to push on the importance of content modeling, because that will solve a lot of more problems above the water, so to say. So more visible problems, and which will not be fixed if you first lay down the foundation for the ultimate fix.
Yep. No, I agree. And you're reminding me of like an important adjacent requirement along with well-modeled content is like a metadata strategy.
Yeah.
Because to do personalization, you need to understand your customers, like your CRM, your CDP, however it is you understand your customer. You need to have that understanding codified and articulated in some kind of like, okay, we know this, like, and not just demographics. That's never a good way to target, to meet people's needs, but like behavioral, there's all kinds of privacy stuff associated with that. But however you do it, having a metadata strategy that describes intent and affinities to the customers, and then on the other side, the metadata strategy for your CMS and your content model is to have things tagged in a way that is matchable with those customer affinities and needs. Yeah. And so, so a content model, a good metadata strategy, and then you still have all the problems you described. Like there's a lot going on there. So I don't have all the answers to this, but I can tell you, I know how I can fit in as a content modeler and a metadata strategist.
This is the call to action.
But I do a lot of the content work I do is like not mundane, but stuff like content audits and the things, because that's what people need. But I would love to be doing more of that.
And the last topic that I want to cover is the content modeling is important, especially in the headless CMS space. Here in the Netherlands, I see a lot of companies now moving away from a more traditional approach and more traditional CMS and moving into the headless CMS space. Some of them with the right vision, because they see content management system now as all the content. Some of them, it's more channel management systems, because they only see the headless CMS for the only channel website.
Yep.
I don't get that, but okay. What do you advise companies that are now looking more to a traditional website and traditional content and moving into the headless CMS space? Do you have kind of...
Yeah, there's a whole bunch to that.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking last night, kind of drafting in my head a blog post about scaling omnichannel strategy, because that's kind of what you're talking about. Like when you talk about, I think that's the implied benefit that people see in going headless is like, oh, good, I can manage all my content in one place and use it in all these other places. So there's a lot to that. We were talking in the car on the way here about the staffing implications of headless, that you need more developers.
Absolutely.
You're not just taking templates out of your CMS. You have to build front ends for your website, for your mobile apps, for your kiosks in the store, for your training materials, for your all that stuff. So so it's not a panacea, and I think I see what you're seeing the same. It is just kind of, it kind of baffles me that like 90% of the headless CMS projects I've seen have been just like replicating the prior model, but it's baby steps. Like if you can show benefits of doing it that way, of decoupling, like one of the main benefits of that is decoupling the content management itself from the front end. That's a great start. If you get the talent in place, like you have like your JavaScript, React, Vue front end, whatever people over there, and then your Node and back end people once you have that kind of sorted out, you may have like a technical capability in your org to go like, oh, we could do that for newsletters too. And
if you have the developers available.
Exactly.
That's important.
That's the problem. And this is something I haven't really thought about a lot. But I mean, you think of the rise of like no code and low code solutions, that maybe that's how you fix that gap. I don't know. It's but
we need more CMS vendors.
Yeah, no, I it's funny, we were joking about that, but I think it's true, because like I think often of one of my early guests on my podcast was Jared Spool, the UX guru, and I was trying to pin him down on best practices, and he goes, chill out, dude. Everything is bespoke. Every organization is unique.
Yeah.
So the best practice is to start any project or initiative or program or whatever with the realization that you're going to be doing it in a unique way.
Yeah.
And there's no one, and no matter how persuasive the vendor, no offense to you,
Yeah.
but no matter how persuasive the vendor is, they're not the solution to your problem.
No,
You've got to figure that out yourself.
Yeah.
And buy the best stuff. So
if you don't have a vision, you will follow the vision of the CMS vendor, and I think that's you need a red sign for that. Yeah.
No, you guys seem. I like your vision here, but it's like, but you're not going to be the best, and you'd be the first person to acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
So,
I don't believe that there is the best CMS for everybody out there. That it is just one system, because the needs of each and every individual customer and company are different. Even maybe within a company, you need for two divisions, two different CMSs to be of value for that particular, let's say, department or label or brand or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's.
It was nice having you on the show, Larry.
It was so fun.
Yeah,
it was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Nice. Thank you all for listening and watching. Check out the other episodes on our YouTube channel. The other episodes are mainly in Dutch, but maybe now with Larry here on the show, we will get more English guests here. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Bye.